In typical follow-the-boat fashion, it's taken us over a month to get from Lombok to the Komodo National Park, a distance of just 400 kilometres as the crow flies. Before we take in busy Labuan Bajo on the island of Flores, or even think about going to see the infamous Komodo dragons, we wanted to relax at our first anchorage. This is Pulau Sebuaya, where we drop the hook by the strange and aptly named 7 mushrooms. One of the advantages for us as cruisers is that we get to visit some of the most spectacular places in the world that take a long time to get to find if you're a tourist.
So this is Subaya Besar, I think the island is called. We're about 10 miles away from the capital town of Labuan Bajo. We've found a rather posh resort close to our anchorage to have a nice cappuccino.
It's the Komodo, what's it called? Komodo Dragon Resort. Near Komodo.
I had an excellent night's sleep last night, even though we're completely open to the north. Nice flat calm waters.
We are anchored a little way just up the passageway here.
We've taken the dinghy down this little stretch here. It's about half a mile or so. We're anchored just around the corner there.
We've come and had some coffees and drinks this morning.
The water is crystal clear.
There's a house reef right here.
And the reef is in perfect condition.
There are loads of fish and lots of coral. You can just wander straight from your chalet and you can go swimming here.
I haven't seen coral like this for a long while.
They have dives, they have a dive boat, they have a spa, they have all the usual beautiful things you'd expect. But just over there, you can go see Komodo dragons and you can go trekking and you can go to visit some volcanoes. It's got it all.
I'm actually trespassing on the private beach because each little cabana that you can stay here at the resort has its own private jetty onto the beach here.
So if you want an exotic, beautiful resort and you want to do more than just lie around on the beach, really recommend this place. And we don't get any pay for this, we're just feeling it from our heart. Left our idyllic little anchorage to the east of Komodo, tiny little islands around there, and we're heading across the bay to the island of Flores. Another new island for us. We're going to be anchoring at Labuan Bajo for a few days, not quite sure how long yet. Should be somewhere where we can provision, get all the basics we need for the boat and any others. It's just interesting as we're going across this bay to see all these tiny little islands, just loads and loads of tiny little islands, all of which have beautiful white sand beaches, many of which are not inhabited at all, and there is diving around here and tourism, but it's still quite wild and still extremely beautiful. This morning when I took the anchor up, by the way, the visibility was so good I could see the anchor at more than 10 metres, I think about 15, 16 metres below the boat. I could see the anchor as it was coming up. So Labuan Bajo, here we come, enjoying this little part of the world. See what else is in store for us.
I think I mentioned briefly in passing the other day about the currents and how notorious they are around here. So just a little bit more on that subject. The quickest way to our next destination, which is only 10 miles away, would have been to have gone down the channel, running north to south, past the Komodo Dragon Resort, where we had very nice coffee the other morning. However, of course, the currents run up and down it. They can hit 3 knots. And as you know, with our underpowered propeller, it could have been a bit of a struggle. We're also on spring tides as well. I don't know how much that contributes to it. Really, the currents, if they correlate to the tide, they don't correlate to when they hit low water or high water, slack, basically. They seem to sort of change around mid-tide. Fortunately, it seems as if Windy is a little bit more precise in its current estimations around this area. we opted to wait for the tide to turn and to hit mid-tide, and rather than going down the channel, with the water now running south to north the wrong way, we're going over the top. The only problem is that the old autopilot's struggling a bit as we move around headlands. Obviously the current's constantly changing, so we've got over a knot against us at the moment, and I'm hoping when we get around the corner and head towards our destination that current will have changed. It may mean steering off course by about 45 degrees as we had to do a few days ago, but I'm hoping the current will be on our side. There are parts of Komodo which I won't go to, specifically the south side of the Komodo Island. Lee and Jason were there, but they have a much faster boat, and even they were complaining about how strong the currents were. I think Esper would really struggle. We got chatting to one of the girls in the dive school at the Komodo Dragon Resort, and she was saying that even the locals have to really plan their short hops between these islands because of the currents, and that's how strong they are. And there are a couple of channels which it is recommended no sailboat should ever pass. Not because of the dragons, but because of fierce currents that can hit double figures. Just interestingly, what we've noticed is that all the satellite images, even the Google ones, which tend to be more recent than Bing, are pretty outdated. This island we're passing now, where we've just been anchoring, there are two big jetties built on them. No sign of those on the satellite images. So even the satellite images we take with a pinch of salt. Our first glimpse of Labuan Bajo town, which is just over there. Liz just said how it looks so much less industrial than it does on the satellite, and it does. It's supposed to be a very nice town. So we're going to anchor maybe a mile or so away, and traditionally this anchorage was used by the rally, and they anchor outside somewhere called the Eco Lodge, who are very accommodating to yachts. However, we've looked on Google Maps and it no longer exists. So we're just going to go there and see what is there now. It gets very shallow here, so we're going to have to keep an eye on the depth as we come in. Now down to 25 metres, and we're probably going to anchor in about 5 metres. Nice to get this beautiful surrounding trees, because where we were anchored previously it was really quite stark, just sort of low-lying grassland all over those islands around Komodo. But here we're back to proper rainforest again. We'll give you a little update after we anchor.
We eventually dropped the hook about 1.5 nautical miles southwest of Labuan Bajo, opposite a bunch of small hotels, including that elusive eco-resort that hadn't closed but had rebranded. We ended up spending some weeks in this location and took it easy, slowly discovering the local sights. One of the reasons we spent so long here wasn't just the calm anchorage, but the spectacular sunsets on offer every night, with an aspect looking back across the islands of Komodo and Sangian. Oh my word, the sunsets. You want sunsets? We ended up befriending the staff at the Luansa Hotel, a good base when provisioning for diesel and food, with the added bonus of convenient scooter hire. The town of Labuan Bajo is just a hop and a skip away. Labuan Bajo is quite different to most of the Indonesian towns of similar size that we've come across. The effects of tourism are evident and give the town a particularly un-Indonesian vibe, at least on the main strip. It's the jumping-off point for trips to the Komodo National Park, so the bulk of the shops are there to sell you boat rides and dive expeditions. There's a profusion of restaurants to suit all tastes, and for every restaurant there's an enticing coffee shop. This is the favourite place of ours for a cup of coffee in the morning. It's Flores Coffee Beans, and it's so good. Just up the road there's Starbucks, but this is where you want to come. This is the Carpenter Cafe on the main drag in Labuan Bajo. The town centre is built around a one-way street system, so to get to the lower part, you have to take your scooter over the top of the town, which offers some great views across the bay. To the casual visitor, you'd be forgiven for thinking Labuan Bajo is just a tourist strip. But it's clear that planners divided up the original town to make way for tourism, leaving 2 main residential areas either side of the strip. To the west are the lower quarters, and to the east, above the main strip, are homes built into the steep hillside. So we've just ducked down into the older part of the town. It's very near the harbour, and you're soon off the main drag where there are all the shops trying to sell you fishing trips, Komodo dragon trips, scuba driving and all that. And then all of a sudden you're into the real old part of Labuan Bajo. It's not very big, but we're going to have a little wander around, and Jamie's going to take some photographs. The lower quarters consist of narrow footpaths, barely wide enough for a scooter, and while these may seem claustrophobic, they offer welcome shade from the sun, keeping the buildings and residents cool and comfortable. Beams of midday sunlight break through gaps and cracks, creating high contrasts on the colourful walls. Children play, women hang out washing, men repair bikes, and there's even time for a quick fish barbecue. The buildings themselves appear to be in a state of flux, with construction and maintenance on every corner. Just outside the town are a number of five-star hotels, mainly built in haste for the recent 42nd ASEAN summit. It's clear Labuan Bajo has a level of affluence quite unlike many Indonesian towns we've visited. You can't help but wonder how much of this trickles down to the local residents seen here. The westernmost section of the town meets the sea, where an enormous modern promenade, made up of large angles, steps and structures, allows pedestrians and locals to catch the late afternoon sun. We spent enough time in Labuan Bajo for Jamie to reignite his love of off-camera street photography, starting with a quick wander into the eastern quarters up on the hill. Jamie's off-camera street photography often has a macabre or sinister feel to it. This is due to the angle of the flash. In last week's podcast, we talked about street photography in more detail. If you missed it, there's a link in the description. Jamie explained that often the frame captured rarely reflects the actual moment. He described how he ended up befriending one street cleaner dressed in yellow who, after capturing her, he stopped to chat with. When he showed her the image, she loved it. This friendly exchange was certainly not reflected in the final image. The landscape on the west coast of Flores is impressive. From a sailing point of view, most of it's anchorable, provided you've got a warrant to stay in the Komodo National Park. But a hot scooter ride into the countryside reveals barren scrubland punctuated by small naked peaks, through which rubble-strewn tracks interweave. I know what, let's get on the bike, let's go to shore and turn right, away from Labuan Bajo and away from civilization. And let's go up the first track we see, with no idea where we're going. Anyway, we've gone along this track, and I keep having to get off because we're both on the one bike today, and walk through and wade through the muddy bits. I've had enough, to be honest with you. It's very beautiful here. Hardly seen any, there don't seem to be any dwellings. there's definite farming going on. We've got some lovely cows behind us, twinkling away. Yeah, it's lovely. Somewhere up here is a place called Teletubbies, which is what Jamie was aiming for, but we reckon that all of this area looks like the Teletubbies. The vertiginous hillsides will almost always lead to a sandy shore and secluded bay. Depending on your vantage point, the westerly views take in the double-peaked volcano of Sangyeon, Komodo Island and eastern Sumbawa. The sun reflected in the water's surface hides the ferocious currents that make sailing and diving hazardous in these parts. While our scooter ride west didn't yield much other than hot and sweaty tempers, the ride to the north of Labuan Bajo around the coastline was another story. This is truly spectacular. We thought we'd go as far north as we could to the sea, and we've arrived here at this lovely little spot. I mean, it's just stunning, nobody here. Beautiful lookout right across the bay, and my word, we can see right back to where we sailed, where we are now, the whole of the coastline, and it is very beautiful. And there's a lovely breeze here, so it has been rather hot and sweaty, but now I'm nice and cool. Venturing further around the northern coastline, there's more to be discovered. Somewhere along here are the Ranko Caves, which is a popular tourist attraction accessible only by boat. Cave schmaves, we've seen loads, and we're more interested in chatting to the local people of the little village of Tanjung Boleng. It just shows you that you can find really remote, quiet, untouched, unspoilt, untouristy fishing villages as a basic tourist on a motorbike. So we come out of Labuan Bajo, we travel for about, 20 minutes, half an hour, over some hills and some sharp slopes which are going to be fun going back up. And we found this little village. No internet, no industry, it is just a fishing village. And the people here couldn't be more friendly and more welcoming. So as I was saying down by the beach, and I was rudely interrupted by a very loud engine, this is a fishing village, but of course it is a fishing village, so everywhere you go it's loud. There's guys working on building brand new boats, people sorting out how engines and maintaining them, and it all involves noise, and of course anywhere you go where there are urchins, as you can see behind me, there's also more noise. Of course, no scooter ride would be complete without a bit of provisioning at the local market. Despite spending many weeks at anchor and taking a number of scooter rides in and around Labuan Bajo, we barely scratched the surface of Western Flores. If you were to come here as a tourist, you'd be spoilt for choice of hotels, restaurants and boat trips. But of course, the main reason for coming to Labuan Bajo is to walk with the infamous and deadly Komodo dragons. And that's where we're going next.